Day 3 of the Supreme Court confirmation battle is officially wrapped up. But the conversations in the media are perhaps setting a narrative that'll last longer than the hearings themselves. The conversation today largely involves not the qualifications of the nominee, but her religion and integrity. So to help us break down the media's reaction to the hearings is Emma Meshell, a spokesperson at Young Americans for Liberty. So Emma, Democratic senators are seemingly decided that a religious litmus test was too politically damaging. But some in the media, they do continue to use it as a criticism against Judge Amy Coney Barrett. So I want to play how Chris Cuomo of CNN brought up her religious views on Tuesday night and then get your reactions on the other side. Let's take a look.
She does have an affiliation in a religious organization, which I think makes her different than most Catholics. I think that her faith is by design more central to her value system and her behavior and thoughts than it would be for just an ordinary Catholic who doesn't belong to people of praise. But let's put that to the side.
They seem to be wanting to put marriage equality back on the table. This was a move that America made, a move forward that we made 5 years ago.
So, Emma, you heard CNN's Chris Cuomo right there, and then Pete Buttigieg building on that point as well. Are those fair criticisms?
I think it's fair to understand the holistic effect that being a person of faith has, but it is not fair to bring that up in a job interview. And that's something that all of us know when we walk in and we're talking to someone who could potentially be our boss, or we're answering questions about our qualifications. To bring religion into that when it is so clearly something that has not affected Judge Amy Coney Barrett's decision making in the judicial process is abhorrent. And I think it's something that sends a message loud and clear to Americans of faith across this country that in America, if you want to make it to the highest levels of government and the highest levels of our judicial system, nothing is off the table anymore. And it sends that message loud and clear.
Now, do you think this is a new thing of any sorts? Like, for example, do you think that this same type of litmus test, I'm hesitant to call it that because it's not officially a litmus test, but it is a criticism. Do you think that this would be used against someone who is a Muslim vying for this position or a Jewish person vying for this position? Or is it specifically because she's a Christian?
It would seem that it was because she was a Christian and a devout Catholic, I'll add. And I don't think that this is something that we would see if someone was a devout Muslim or a devout, they're following Judaism. I don't think that we would see the same sort of critique here and the same sort of testing. Maybe it's not a litmus test, like you said, but there is clearly an emphasis being placed on her faith. And again, this is something that does contribute to a person holistically. But when you're being interviewed for a job that is so specific, her job is to interpret the law and measure up our laws against the Constitution and decide whether things are constitutional. That is her job. And her faith should have absolutely nothing to do with that, as she has repeatedly said. And the fact that it is continually being dragged into this discussion, again, sends a message to people of faith across the country. If you are devout and if you are active in your faith, it is now completely on the table when you're in a job interview.
And I think it's important to bring up, too, that Senator Dianne Feinstein first brought up the dogma lives within you type of comment back when she was being confirmed for the appellate court. I mean, it wasn't under this huge type of spotlight under the Supreme Court confirmation battle at all. So it does take place even outside of the spotlight as well. But I've noticed, too, that some media outlets are willing to question the intellect of Judge Amy Coney Barrett, or at the very least her integrity, which is a little bit surprising to me. This was a common theme on MSNBC last night, primarily by primetime host Joy Reid, who didn't hold back when it came to her criticisms of the nominee. So let's take a look at that real quick.
This one should have been a layup. This was an easy one about whether the president of the United States can unilaterally delay the election. I'm not a lawyer, but I know he can't. Let's see if Ms. Coney Barrett knows that. Here she is. Let's play another one. This is one where this lady is let's just remind her, she's a sitting judge right now. So she theoretically knows the law. You know, Ari, if this were an SNL skit, one of the senators would say, Ms. Coney Barrett, what time is it? And she'd say, you know, I'm not here to commit to answering that question about time. I know time exists, but you know what I mean? I mean, she literally just sort of went blank whenever someone asked her a factual question about the law.
So a lot of demeaning words there, that she theoretically should know the law, that she was avoiding questions perhaps because she doesn't know the answer, things of that nature. But I don't think anybody, even Democratic senators, are arguing that she's not qualified for the position based on her intellect, correct?
Well, if they tried to argue that, I think they would fail flatly, and it would be very obvious that they're just trying to discredit this woman because of her background and because of who appointed her. And it's ironic to me to hear an MSNBC host even bring up SNL because it seems like that network is more and more like an SNL sketch every day. But seriously, the fact that they would not be able to wrap their heads around the fact that perhaps something related to the election could be on the docket for the Supreme Court, and it would actually be very egregious and against the legal conduct, sorry, that these judges are trying to uphold to weigh in on such an issue. So the fact that they're ridiculing her is not surprising, but the fact that those are the grounds they're doing it on is extra shocking.
And I think that it's worth pointing out, too, that there is precedent for a Supreme Court justice not to recuse themselves in situations like the ones that have been laid out, because in essence, the theory behind that is because then they're giving credence to the lower court decision if they decide not to weigh in at all. That's traditionally how many Supreme Court justices have viewed these types of cases as well, especially one that we could see come up this upcoming election cycle when the results presumably, that's the way a lot of senators are saying, that it could make its way to the Supreme Court. But I want to now look at the other side of this, because conservative media seems to be rather excited about the prospect of a judge or Justice Amy Coney Barrett now on the Supreme Court, likely acknowledging that Chief Justice John Roberts has been somewhat of a disappointment for many conservatives on key issues. So I want to show you how Sean Hannity of Fox News is covering the hearings this week and see if you think that she will live up to his expectations. So let's play that clip.
As we begin tonight, Judge Amy Coney Barrett is well on her way now to becoming the newest justice of the United States Supreme Court. She ran circles around the Democratic senators at today's hearing. She made them, frankly, look stupid, unprepared, desperate. She exposed the absolute hatred that now defines this new radical, insane, and extreme Democratic Socialist Party. She did it with a calm, unflappable demeanor and a solid command of facts. Her track record is impeccable. She is more qualified to serve on the highest court in the land than, well, a lot of sitting justices now.
So, it's no surprise that conservatives want her on the bench, but do you think she'll live up to their expectations?
I have a feeling that she will, and here's why. She is very, very clear that she is an originalist, and she understands that the Constitution is something that should not be interpreted as a living document or as something that changes over time, but that we are to interpret it the way it was written, because it was written very deliberately by the founding fathers. And I think that that's something that conservatives have wanted to see in a judge for a very long time. So I understand the excitement from conservative media, from figures like Sean Hannity, because it's been so long since we've seen someone who is so unabashedly sticking to the Constitution and wants to uphold the ideas that it contains. So the excitement is not surprising to me. I feel that same excitement myself as someone who cares about the Constitution. I look forward to seeing what her decisions look like in the future.
And of course, a lot of the concerns are stemming from that Chief Justice John Roberts has not lived up to their expectations, at least as of recently on key issues. The Affordable Care Act, I think, is the one that is in most people's minds. But it's also unfortunate, but there are political ramifications to this confirmation process. People like to think that judicial nominations don't, but Judge Amy Coney Barrett, she is an impressive Catholic woman, as we were saying, at a time where the president is reaching out to that very demographic. In fact, we heard President Trump at his rally last night make a direct plea to women in the suburbs. I want to show that moment really quickly.
And I will tell you, Amy's made a great impression. So can I ask you to do me a favor? Suburban women, will you please like me? Remember? Please. Please. I saved your damn neighborhood, okay?
So we saw what some called a Kavanaugh bump after the 2018 midterms following his Supreme Court hearing. Do you think that we'll see a same thing in the November election when it comes to Judge Amy Coney Barrett?
Absolutely. I think women across the country and across the political spectrum have a certain tendency to look up to these women who are in these seats of power. And when you look at a woman who has raised 7 children while ascending to potentially the highest court in the land, she is an outstanding scholar within her field. She's renowned across the country. That is something that's super inspiring. And I think when you see that sort of thing, that can actually negate the sort of influence that Trump can have on suburban women sometimes. He's not always super polished with his words. He doesn't always say the right thing. And that's something that a lot of suburban women have an issue with, is his demeanor, the way that he talks and the way that he says certain things. And I think that this is something that could actually sort of counteract that. because we're seeing action from him in a way that is really inspiring, not only to working mothers across this country, many of whom live in the suburbs, but also to young women. And I think that's something that shouldn't be overlooked. I would not be surprised to see a significant bump among suburban women this fall.
And I don't think it matters where you stand politically. I mean, you can't look at Judge Barrett and say that she's not an impressive woman. So I think you're right, that there will be some appeal to some degree when it comes to her politically. But Emma, Meshell, I really appreciate you coming on the program tonight. Thank you.